Redditors who massively f***ed up at work. What happened? Before we begin with the first story, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification to stay updated with us. Number 20. I worked at a McDonald's and accidentally fell in the ice maker right at the beginning of my shift. They had to close the restaurant for the rest of the day to dump out and sanitize the machine. Number 19. Was promoted to terminal manager, and I was a dumb 25-year-old idealist. We had an essential employee, a mechanic, who kept our fleet of trucks running. At least, that was his job description. Less than a month on the job, it came to my attention that he was a working alcoholic, and his work on our fleet was underwhelming. My boss told me to fire him once we had a new mechanic ready to come in. I told the old mechanic that he should probably start looking for new work if he couldn't do the job. Word got back to them through the pipeline that he was going to be fired. I went to a bar with my assistant manager after working 40 days straight and low, and behold, the mechanic showed up. Long story short, the mechanic attempted to abduct me with his adult son and dump my body in a frozen lake. The whole thing became a large dramatic bullshit event that put me in the hospital for a few hours, and we both lost our jobs. Number 18. Controls engineer. Bit a copy-paste error while programming and a 2 was a 3. So one machine tagged at 3 was waiting for conditions of 2. So naturally the lift moved when it thought it should and crashed into another machine. Of course I'm having to stand there figuring out the issue, while maintenance is up there replacing busted parts. But because I made 1,000 changes, it didn't click fast enough, and well, it happened again. Number 17. Buried for his tech job as a youngin', and I forgot to verify if someone had backed up files before a clean OS install. Lost the guy's Outlook archive files with 10 years' worth of conveniently stored and important email. Apologized and sheepishly turned the issue over to the admins. Number 16. During the first week of my first job in animation after I graduated, I had to move a bunch of scene files from one server to another. The files were heavy, so I was told to just cut and paste them to make it faster. I accidentally put them in the wrong area and without thinking just deleted them and went back to move the files again. They weren't there. I had forgotten. I hadn't copied them. I lost 5 minutes of full animation. My longtime friend who recommended me for the job got in because his backup didn't catch the files, and my direct supervisor worked for 21 days straight to help redo all the animation. The studio and everyone involved were way nicer to me about it than I expected. I kept my job and I brought in donuts for the whole crew for a week after. But it was an awful start. Number 15. The chef was angry that day. I was advised by my coworkers to do whatever it takes to get on his good side. I thought, I'll just try to avoid him. He was standing in the cooler taking inventory. Beside him were the 5-gallon containers of prop food. I sneaked in and tried to quickly grab the ranch container, but in my haste, I nudged another. It was the French onion soup, all 5 gallons of it, on his pants and shoes. Yes, he was upset. The prep girl was upset. I had 10 minutes till lunch service started. I have no idea how I'm still alive. Number 14. I was new to SQL and accidentally mailed a list of people with deceased. Date is not no instead of is null. So an entire marketing campaign was sent to dead people. That eventually led to our marketing tools being hard-coded not to mail dead people, which makes sense, but I was terrified when I found out. Number 13. I work at a quick lube-style shop, so I work around fairly new vehicles. I wish I could say it's all cheap shit, but no. The dude comes in one day for one of our services, so I'm doing everything under the hood of a BMW 7 Series. We filled the oil, ran the pressure check, and closed the hood, because the newer BMWs have a digital oil readout on the screen in the dash. Dude leaves and comes back 5 hours later. What is freaking smoking? Off. We open the hood and there are about 3 quarts of oil in the engine compartment. I didn't put the oil cap back on properly. Laugh, I did. Man, I was pissed. Number 12. I love telling this story. Back in the floppy disk, pre-internet days of computers, I was tasked by my job to do a software installation on board a Coast Guard icebreaker. I flew from Ottawa to Halifax. Then I caught a taxi to CFB Shearwater, from where Twin Otter flew me 1,000 km north through a little town on the border of Quebec and Labrador. From there I was flown by helicopter to do an at-sea landing on the icebreaker. After landing I went down to the engine control room, where the computer was located, and laid out the disks. Disk 1, Disk 2, Disk 3, Disk 4, Disk 6. Disk 5 was still on my desk in Ottawa. Number 11. Chemistry teacher here. On my first day of teaching, I set my classroom on fire after some unfortunate incidents involving sodium water and a glass tank. The problem was that the glass tank was too big, so the hydrogen gas got to build up to a decent amount. Then, suddenly, kaboom! The glass tank exploded. There was shattered glass everywhere, and at the students who were all wearing safety glasses. A column of water grew from the glass tank to the ceiling, and the ceiling started to burn. After a few moments, the fire died out and the fire alarm was loud, and I had to make sure all of the students were okay, which they were. It ended up being one of the funniest classes to teach for many years. The students absolutely loved it. I was a bit of a nervous wreck for a few hours. The worst thing in hindsight is all of the comments saying things like, "You started your career with a bang," and stuff like that. Number 10. I was a bartender. I knocked down the entire top shelf, thousands of dollars in liquor. ETA, I didn't get in trouble. The boss just built a stronger shelf. You found it hilarious that the only thing I saved was a $6 bottle of slow gin that happened to be on the wrong shelf. Number 9. I was a nanny. A little 2-year-old I was watching fell down and hit the back of her head on the concrete. I rushed over to her, but she didn't move or blink, just lay on her back motionless. I tried to check for breathing and pulse, and pretty much blanked on everything I'd ever learned in CPR/first aid training in my panic. She seriously looked dead. I screamed for help. The neighbors came running, and I told them to call an ambulance. The police, fire department, and ambulance showed up within minutes. She was rushed to the hospital and a million tests were run. Turns out she barely even had a bruise, no concussion, no seizure, no injury, nothing. The doctor said she probably just got scared and froze for just long enough for me to lose my shit. Her parents were charged $5,000 to tell them their child got surprised. Number 8. Concessions at a movie theater. I was thinking popcorn, but I had learned that if we used a bit more seasoning and oil, the popcorn tasted insanely better. What I didn't know was the popcorn machine had broken earlier and wasn't stirring the popcorn anymore. So after I had made a new batch and no popcorn coming out, I decided to check on the machine and a hot glob of oil flew into my eye. Started cussing and screaming in front of a whole bunch of customers and got rushed into the back to wash my eye out. Number 7. I worked at a retail store when 2 women walked by me and said, "Tell coworker Petchy gave us excellent service," on their way out of the store. I told my coworker about it afterward, and she said, "Who were they?" And for some reason my dumbass said, "I'm not sure, but they were 2 heavy-set women," then described what they were wearing. And my coworker said, "Well, that was my mom and my aunt." I have never been more embarrassed in my life. Number 6. I used to work prep at a fairly large chain restaurant. One day, nearing lunch, I decided it would be funny to play a prank on a line cook who was by himself for the next 30 minutes. I set all 5 of our microwaves to go off at the same time. The only problem is they were empty, and I set them all for a minute each. They all caught fire. It was the first of the month Saturday. Number 5. I work in a heavily regulated, incredibly high-pressure field. You can get blackballed by the industry if you slip up because, at a certain level, everyone knows everyone. I reached a position where I had a lot of responsibility. I was the face of very valuable projects. I beefed the stats on one of the most valuable ever. I have been lied to, but one of my responsibilities was to ensure no one lied about my studies. It was simply enough that I was convinced I was done. Like in the industry done, I envisioned everything collapsing around me. I was already battling mental illness. This sent me to the hospital with suicidal ideations. I stayed for a week. I missed a month's worth of work, which was torture because I was used to having complete control over everything, and never missed a day / often lost vacation. I got back and found that news of my mistake had hardly traveled. A few engineers had rendered the project up beyond all reason. It literally could not proceed because of what they'd done. I went back to the hospital for therapy pretty regularly for a while. I saw 3 other people from my company paying visits and wondered if they saw me. Number 4. Working the stockroom at Walmart, grabbed a Pepsi pallet with the forklift and didn't realize it was a short pallet. The forks came out the other side and through to the pallet of glass Coke bottles. It was up against. When I lifted the Pepsi, the Coke came up with it and dumped the entire unwrapped pallet of glass bottles, spilling all that sticky soda on the floor. That mess was hell to clean up. However, the vendor had to eat the costs because that store's posted policy is that they cannot leave unwrapped pallets unless it is being worked. Number 3. I dropped a screw inside the engine motor of a TGV train. Oh God. We spent half an hour trying to catch it by moving a magnetic stick inside a crankshaft, with oil spilling everywhere. The engine was new and about to be mounted on a train that was supposed to run later in the day. I was so terrified I would possibly cause quite a lot of trouble, since no other train or engine was available. Shout out to our manager, who finally got that screw and definitely deserved his half a dozen of croissants the next morning. Number 2. Accidentally left out the move next method on a loop that sent out an email broadcast, which meant it mail bombed the first recipient in the loop until we realized what was happening and killed the process. The CEO's email was the first email address in the loop. He was an anyway and was absolutely incoherent with rage when his Outlook crashed when downloading 15,000 emails inviting him to take a satisfaction survey. Good thing it was only a test. Number 1. A very important and very big customer placed an order for some chemical bulk to be delivered early January. Our contract with them stated that every day we were late we would be fined millions. The bulk plant finished on time and just needed the drums to pour the bulk into. Warehouse came up to my office. I was the purchaser responsible for buying the drums. Where are the 250-liter drums? Bulk plants need them. It's fine, I thought. I placed the order before Christmas, and I remember doing it. Look at SAP. Why is the supplier late? They're never late. Check my order. Mouth goes instantly dry, and I start to sweat. I had placed the order, but I forgot that for this particular supplier, I needed to email them the PO. We had just changed the system to allow SAP to auto-email the supplier after we placed an order, but not for this one supplier. I knew this but must have forgotten. These drums had a 2-week lead time from the supplier, so I knew I was dead. Not only would we have had millions of pounds of fines, but the production plant would have been put on hold, having to store tons of bulk with nowhere to put it. I went and told my boss and just told him I had funked up. Being an awesome guy and boss, He thanked me for being honest and told me it's going to be OK. He called the supplier, sweet-talked them, and because we were a good customer, they allowed us to take another customer's order. The drones were delivered the next day. That was about 9 years ago, and I still think about it. Thank you for watching. If you like more of this video, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you have any similar story, you can share them in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.